America's auto industry is collapsing. Tariffs meant to save jobs are destroying them. It's not just cars. America's global power is at stake. Picture a Kentucky factory, machines frozen in silence. A Toledo parking lot empty under dim streetlights. A car costing $4,000 more than it should. This is America, in April 2025, trapped in a crisis it created. On March 26, 2025, President Donald Trump slapped a 25% tariff on vehicles and parts from Mexico and Canada, plus a 10% tariff on Chinese imports, claiming it would protect American jobs and security. Instead, it's shattering the North American auto industry, a cornerstone of U.S. pride and economic might. This isn't just about cars. It's a geopolitical chess game, with tariffs as pawns and global dominance as the prize. Ford, GM, and Stellantis face billions in losses, while China's BYD races ahead, untouched by America's trade barriers. Ford CEO Jim Farley stormed Washington, not for fame, but to warn of collapse with stark numbers. This script dives into the tariff crisis, exposing the silent erosion of an industry and the global shift it signals. We're not chasing headlines, we're revealing the blueprint of a nation losing its way. Stay with us, because America's future hangs in the balance. Tariffs are gutting America's auto industry. A policy to save jobs is costing $100 billion. It's not just money. Our allies are turning away. Let's slice through the political noise. On March 26, 2025, Trump invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, imposing a 25% tariff on vehicles and parts from Mexico and Canada, and a 10% tariff on Chinese electronics, batteries, and EV components. The goal? Bolster national security and revive American manufacturing. The truth? It's a self-inflicted wound, ripping apart the auto industry, one of America's last industrial giants, and threatening its survival. Industry data shows 43% of parts in a US-built Ford vehicle come from Mexico or Canada, weaving a complex web of North American supply chains. Transmissions for the Ford Bronco are crafted in Mexican factories with precision. Canadian steel and aluminum shape the F-150, America's top-selling truck for decades. Wiring harnesses, brake systems, and sensors cross borders 7 or more times before a car is born. This isn't chaos. It's a finely tuned system built on trust, speed, and collaboration. Break one link, and it all collapses. That's what these tariffs are doing. Goldman Sachs predicts tariffs will spike car prices by $2,000 to $4,000, hitting consumers hard. A Ford Edge, once $38,000, now nears $42,000. The Mustang Mach-E, a middle-class EV dream, edges towards $60,000. Ford faces a brutal choice: swallow billions in losses, crippling its finances, or pass costs to buyers, alienating customers. Neither works. CNBC warns the auto industry could lose $100 billion in the next year, threatening millions of jobs from factories to dealerships. This isn't protection, it's destruction, smashing an industry that defines American strength. The damage isn't just economic, it's a geopolitical disaster. Mexico and Canada, pillars of the USMCA trade agreement, face a stab in the back. Their factories, intertwined with US production, are stalling. In Mexico, transmission plants supplying Ford and GM are cutting jobs. In Canada, steel and aluminum mills critical for US trucks are slowing. This isn't a trade spat, it's a betrayal, fraying decades-old alliances. Mexican and Canadian leaders, reeling from the tariffs, are eyeing retaliation, tariffs on US crops or new trade deals with Europe or Asia. The USMCA, meant to unite North America against global rivals, is unraveling. Meanwhile, China's BYD, untouched by US tariffs, outran Tesla globally in 2024. Its supply chains, rich with lithium and semiconductors, fuel China's EV dominance. The US isn't just pushing away allies, it's handing China a free pass. Tariffs, pitched as a shield for workers, are a blade cutting America's industry and influence. Stellantis cut 900 US jobs last week, idling Canadian and Mexican plants. Jaguar, Land Rover, and Audi are halting US exports. Dealership lots shrink, and consumers wince at every car payment. This crisis, born of misjudgment, proves America first could leave America alone. Its industries crumbling, its allies slipping away. The Made in America dream is a lie. Your American car is built by the world. Tariffs aren't saving it, they're giving China the crown. Built in America sparks pride, conjuring images of heartland factories and gritty workers. But here's the raw truth. There is no 100% American car. Not Ford, not Chevy, not even Tesla. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says 40 to 60% of parts in U.S. assembled vehicles are foreign, sourced from over 40 countries. A car is a global masterpiece. Its 30,000 parts synced across borders. Mexican transmissions power the Ford Bronco. German sensors steer the Chevy Silverado. Over 60% of EV batteries come from China, and some parts, like precision transmissions, are made only in Japan or Mexico. This global web isn't a weakness, it's a strength, perfected to keep costs low and quality high. The auto industry runs on margins thinner than a dime, where one late shipment turns a $40,000 car into junk. Telling automakers to make it here is like telling a pilot to fly without wings. It's patriotic noise that falls apart under scrutiny. Advanced sensors come only from Germany or Taiwan, needing facilities the US lacks. Wiring harnesses rely on Mexico's skilled workers and proximity, saving costs that keep US cars competitive. This system thrives on speed, precision, and teamwork, not isolation. Tariffs are smashing this balance, turning allies into foes. Mexico and Canada, once partners in a shared economy, are caught in a trade war they didn't start. In Mexico, factories making transmissions and brakes face soaring costs and fading orders. Workers who powered U.S. cars are now jobless, victims of America's tariff blitz. In Canada, steel and aluminum plants, vital for U.S. trucks, are cutting output, their hauls quiet. This isn't just economic, it's a diplomatic gut punch. The USMCA, built to strengthen North American trade, is collapsing as Mexico and Canada weigh retaliating with tariffs on U.S. goods, think corn, whiskey, or tech, or forging new deals with Europe or Asia. The U.S. is losing allies it needs to face China's rise. Meanwhile, China's BYD, free from U.S. tariffs, outsold Tesla globally in 2024, dominating with 75% of global battery material processing. As America's tariffs strangle its industry, China's EV empire grows, poised to dominate the next industrial era. The tension is clear. America's push for independence isolates it from partners and boosts its rival. The auto industry, a symbol of U.S. brilliance, is now a warning of how slogans trump strategy. Hyundai, Toyota, and BMW, unburdened by U.S. tariffs, are stealing market share, their factories buzzing while Detroit's falter. The U.S. shaped this global system, but now it's breaking it, risking jobs and its global standing. America's heartland is hurting. Tariffs are killing jobs, not creating them. It's not just us. Our allies are suffering too. Collapse doesn't scream, it whispers. A Kentucky machine stops, an Ohio shift vanishes. A Michigan supplier locks its gates. Layoffs spread like a quiet plague, hitting suppliers in Romulus, Michigan, El Paso, Texas, and Erosis, Mexico. No rallies, no viral posts, just lives unraveling. Stellantis axed 900 U.S. jobs last week, shutting down plants in Canada and Mexico. A Ford Explorer, once $44,000, now hits $48,000, and dealership lots are half empty, starved by soaring costs. This isn't a hiccup, it's a crisis tearing at America's core. The human toll is brutal. In Toledo, Dearborn, and Bowling Green, families face shorter shifts, skyrocketing car payments, and dreams slipping away. Ford's Ohio EV battery plant, promised as a job boom, sits half-stocked, its hope fading. In Kentucky, suppliers are crushed as foreign automakers, free from U.S. tariffs, flood markets with cheaper cars. The media calls it market shifts, but for workers, it's a slow choke. Another Monday of doubt, another unpaid bill. The pain leaps borders, fueling geopolitical rifts. Mexican and Canadian workers, once allies in a shared industry, are losing jobs due to U.S. tariffs. In Erosis, Mexico, transmission plants for Ford and GM are slashing shifts, leaving workers stranded. In Ontario, Canada, Steelworkers who built U.S. trucks face layoffs, their plants dim. These aren't rivals, they're partners in a system the U.S. led. Now, their governments, burned by the USMCA's failure, plan retaliation. Mexico could hit U.S. farmers with tariffs, hurting Iowa and Nebraska. Canada might ink deals with the EU or China, bypassing American goods. The U.S. is breaking a North American alliance that checked China's power, choosing isolation over unity. Meanwhile, Hyundai, Toyota, and BMW, untouched by U.S. tariffs, are grabbing U.S. market share. Their factories hum while Detroit's stall, their prices beating American brands. This isn't just money, it's power shifting. America's heartland, its industrial spine, is trapped, squeezed by its own policies and outplayed by global rivals. The silence grows, and with it, the risk that these towns, once alive with industry, become hollow shells. Tariffs, sold to save workers, are strangling the communities they meant to lift. The world's outplaying America, China's winning while America stalls. Our allies' next move could seal our fate. As America stumbles, the world charges forward, with global dominance on the line. China's BYD beat Tesla globally in 2024, its EV factories powered by 75% of the world's battery material processing. Its supply chains, loaded with lithium and semiconductors, dodge U.S. tariffs, cementing China's lead in the electric vehicle race. Meanwhile, Ford's $10 billion EV projects in Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky, and Tennessee are crumbling, starved of the cross-border trade they needed. These plants, built to secure America's EV future, counted on Canadian nickel and Mexican logistics. Tariffs have cracked that foundation. Other nations are pouncing on America's error. Germany's doubling down on EV supply chains, building battery plants to rival China. South Korea locked a lithium deal in Argentina, keeping Hyundai and Kia ahead. These countries aren't fighting U.S. tariffs. They're using them, positioning as leaders in the next industrial wave. Hyundai, Toyota, and BMW, free from U.S. tariffs, are slashing prices and stealing U.S. market share. Their factories roar while American plants limp, their cars crowding lots as Ford and GM struggle. The geopolitical stakes are massive. Tariffs are pushing Canada and Mexico, our allies, toward rivals like the EU or China. Mexico, a U.S. manufacturing hub, could pivot to Asia, redirecting exports. Canada, supplying steel and nickel, might turn to Europe. This cracks the North American bloc, a shield against China's rise. Meanwhile, China's flooding markets with cheap EVs, taking ground America once owned. The U.S. risks fading as a global auto player, its influence shrinking as rivals plan long-term. History warns, broken industries don't return. Textiles, steel, and cameras never came back to America. The auto industry, a U.S. powerhouse, faces that cliff. Trump's team calls this a reset, but it's a gamble with no rebuild plan. Factories take years to build. Skills take decades to hone. Supply chains once lost may never return. The U.S. is playing chess alone, burning pieces while rivals advance. In 2024, America led in EV innovation, with Ford, GM, and Rivian chasing Tesla. Now, that lead's fading, not from lack of skill, but from bad strategy. Tariffs, meant to restore greatness, are giving ground to nations that choose results over rhetoric. Trump's pharma tariffs could cripple healthcare. Drug costs could soar by $51 billion a year. It's not just prices, shortages could endanger lives. While the auto industry reels, a new storm looms over pharmaceuticals. President Trump has threatened a 25% tariff on pharmaceutical imports, citing national security and a push to bring drug manufacturing back to the U.S. But a report by Ernst & Young, commissioned by the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, PHRMA, reveals a grim reality. These tariffs could increase U.S. drug costs by $51 billion annually, raising prices by up to 12.9% if passed on to consumers. This isn't about saving healthcare. It's a misstep that could strain patients, hospitals, and insurers. In 2023, the U.S. imported $203 billion in pharmaceutical products, with 73% from Europe, mainly Ireland, Germany, and Switzerland. Total U.S. sales of finished pharmaceuticals were $393 billion that year. These imports include critical drugs like cancer treatments, diabetes medications, and generics that keep costs low. Unlike autos, where parts cross borders repeatedly, pharmaceuticals rely on a global supply chain for active ingredients and finished drugs. Roughly 25% of U.S. pharmaceutical output, worth $101 billion in 2023, is exported, supporting 490,000 jobs. Tariffs could raise input costs, weaken foreign demand, and risk these jobs if other nations retaliate. The impact is immediate and personal. A 25% tariff could make branded drugs like Merck's Keytruda or Novo Nordisk's Wegovy even pricier, hitting patients with higher co-pays or premiums. Generics, which account for 90% of U.S. prescriptions but only 17% of spending, face a graver threat. Mostly made in India and China, these low-margin drugs could become scarce if manufacturers cut exports or go bankrupt. The U.S. already faces 270 active drug shortages, worsened by tariffs that could disrupt supply chains for generics and sterile injectables used in hospitals. Geopolitically, the tariffs are a flashpoint. The Trump administration's probe into pharmaceutical imports, launched under Section 232, signals tariffs may hit soon. Drug makers are lobbying for a phased approach to ease the blow, but the timeline is tight, with a 21-day public comment period underway. Europe, a major supplier, could retaliate with tariffs on U.S. drugs, escalating a trade war. Ireland, a hub for U.S. firms like Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, faces particular risk, as Trump has criticized its tax breaks. This strains U.S.-EU ties, pushing allies toward countermeasures, while China, a key supplier of raw ingredients, gains leverage. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi called U.S. tariffs extreme egoism, accusing America of bullying and breaking international trade rules. Beijing, untouched by U.S. pharma tariffs so far, could exploit the chaos, strengthening its role in global drug supply chains. The U.S. risks isolating allies like Europe while empowering China, which already dominates raw material production. Moving manufacturing to the U.S. sounds noble, but FARMA warns it takes 5 to 10 years and $2 billion per facility, time and money the industry can't spare. Tariffs won't rebuild factories overnight. They'll raise costs and spark shortages, hitting patients hardest. China's striking back at U.S. tariffs, and we're exposing the clash. They're calling America's moves extreme egoism. It's not just talk, they're rallying the world against us. The auto industry's collapse is a warning, but China's response to U.S. tariffs could ignite a broader global firestorm. On April 26, 2025, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi condemned U.S. tariffs as extreme egoism, accusing America of bullying and violating international trade rules. This isn't just rhetoric, it's a calculated move to position China as a defender of global trade, rallying nations against U.S. policies. The auto industry, already reeling from Trump's 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada and 10% on Chinese imports, is a prime example. But China's defiance signals a deeper challenge to America's economic dominance. Wang Yi's remarks, made during a meeting with EU counterparts in Vientiane, Laos, targeted U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods, including EV components and batteries. He argued these measures disrupt global supply chains, harm mutual trust, and undermine the rules-based trade system established post-World War II. For the auto industry, this hits hard. China supplies over 60% of global EV batteries, critical for Ford's Mustang Mach-E and GM's electric lineup. The 10% U.S. tariff on these components spikes costs, contributing to Goldman Sachs' estimate of 2,000 to 4,000 price hikes per car. Meanwhile, China's BYD, which outsold Tesla globally in 2024, faces no such barriers at home, churning out affordable EVs and capturing markets America once led. China's strategy goes beyond words. Wang Yi called for a united front with the EU and ASEAN nations to counter U.S. tariffs, leveraging China's role as a trade giant. The EU, already stung by U.S. tariffs on steel and autos, is a ripe ally. European automakers like Volkswagen and BMW, which rely on Chinese batteries, face higher costs from U.S. tariffs, pushing them to deepen ties with China. ASEAN nations, key suppliers of electronics for U.S. cars, are also wary of America's trade barriers. China's hosting the China International Import Expo in November 2025, where it plans to showcase its openness to trade, contrasting with U.S. isolationism. This could sway nations like Thailand and Malaysia, auto parts hubs, to align with Beijing. The geopolitical stakes are immense. U.S. tariffs are alienating allies like Canada and Mexico, who face 25% levies on auto parts, while China courts them with trade overtures. Mexico, a linchpin for U.S. auto manufacturing, could pivot to Chinese partnerships, redirecting its $101 billion auto export market. Canada, supplying steel for the F-150, might seek EU or Asian buyers. The USMCA, meant to unify North America, is collapsing, leaving the U.S. vulnerable. China's defiance isn't just about autos, it's about painting America as a selfish actor, eroding its soft power. The U.S. auto industry's $100 billion projected loss is a symptom of this misstep. Stellantis's 900 layoffs and Ford's stalled $10 billion EV projects reflect the chaos. China, meanwhile, strengthens its 75% grip on battery materials, untouched by U.S. tariffs. History shows fractured trade systems don't rebuild easily. Think post-World War I trade wars. America's tariffs, meant to protect, are isolating it, boosting China's global clout while the heartland bleeds. This tariff crisis isn't just a mistake, it's a warning of a nation losing its way. Ford's billions in losses, Stellantis's 900 layoffs, and the industry's $100 billion risk signal a deeper failure. The U.S. is hitting itself, calling it strategy, alienating Mexico and Canada while empowering China. The auto industry, America's grit, is fading. Not with a bang, but with quiet exits. The cost is here, plants slow, jobs vanish. A $50,000 car isn't inflation, it's policy. Soon factories will move to Brazil, batteries to China, power to others. But you see it, the bolts loosening, the seams ripping. Don't turn away. Ask what Made in America costs. The price isn't dollars, it's a superpower slipping. You've seen the playbook behind the headlines? Now stay ahead of the game. Subscribe to decode the moves shaping tomorrow's world, from trade wars to tech revolutions. Join the 1% who don't just watch the news but understand it. Hit that button, share this video, and follow us for the stories others miss. The next shift is coming. Will you see it first? Let's unravel the future together, one silent victory at a time.